Common question which we get is that who is a solution architect? I will ask you, Alex and Chris, in a minute, but let me give you my version of what I call solution architect. What I call a solution architect, someone who can answer almost all question with it depends. When you talk to a solution architect, he or she would always say that, hey, should I use X or Y service, or should I use A reason or B reason? They would always say it depends. And yes, exactly, it depends, because you can't just black and white answer a question. You have to think a lot about what the motivation for the customer is, what they are looking for, what they want to get out of it, what kind of limitation they are working with. So I would say lots of time when I get a question like, hey, Ashish, what I should do in that case, I respond, it depends. That's my version of answering. But let's hear it from Alex. That Alex, please walk us through like how you define who is a solution architect.
That's a great question, Ashish, really. First of all, solutions architects wear different hats, and especially like if you compare one company to another, it might be, people understand a little bit different things when it comes to solutions architecture and solutions architect. So here at AWS, solutions architects are responsible for taking care of customers. So you kind of get customer or customers, and you kind of have like a relationship with them, and you really try to understand in depth what their technical problems. And with that, you can then guide them through their cloud journey. You can really find where their inefficiencies are, and you can then provide solutions, hence the name, right? So you can provide solutions for them to implement to tackle those inefficiencies, for example. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on it. So that's a technical role, but it involves a lot of interpersonal skills. You need to talk a lot to different people and to understand their problems. And sometimes those problems might not be clearly articulated because people might be like inside their own bubble, and they might have never seen like how things could be different. So as a solutions architect, you're the one to connect the dots for different specialists within different sort of companies.
Yeah, makes sense. It's interesting to see that how your view is of what you do on that. So now, Alex, and I have another question for you. And like, what is your day-to-day work looking like? Like, what you do on day-to-day basis? What keeps you busy? Like, if I talk about, hey, I do X, Y, Z every day, what will be those activities which you perform?
Right. Yeah, that's another great question. So the fact that we need to wear different hats, and sometimes to go deep inside like technical things, sometimes just go and help out teams, just kind of providing knowledge workshops and learning sessions, and sometimes maybe just kind of listen to the problems and try to understand what the real problem is. One day might be very different from another. Sometimes at AWS, solutions architects are encouraged to go and actually just kind of give back to the community. So it's a voluntarily thing, but it's very encouraged to do. So yeah, like one normal day might be that you just go and you engage with your customer, with their development team, for example, with their networking team, and you do like sort of workshop for the whole day. You go inside one or another technical field. You have like hands-on labs maybe with them. You help them out to understand different concepts better. Then on the other day, it might be that you engage with an entity which plans to do like a new project, for example, and that project, well, it's kind of new for them, and they really need traction to understand how they can move things forward. So that's going to be like a different type of engagement. There you might need to provide like design diagrams. You need to kind of put their business requirements into more like technical tangible requirements. And
Mhm.
also as an architect, you might need also to understand how much resources will they need to kind of go and implement that thing in the end.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you are always busy doing something, isn't it? Like, so do you design architectures also, or you just implement it, or is there a difference between who implements and who designs?
That's a great question, and there's a difference who implements and who designs the architecture. Yes, so solutions architects normally stay very early in the sort of a path of an entity, of a company, of a project, towards implementation or towards like production rollout. And solutions architects shape, of course, the initial architecture and see how it can be then easily implemented by the company. Then it depends. Ashish, you were certainly right. It depends. It's like a favorite phrase. I was trying to kind of not to not push on this stereotype, but yeah, here it is. So it depends how much the company has resources, for example, internal, and how much knowledge. Will they be able to pull this off on their own, or maybe they will need some, support, be it AWS or be it like maybe some other internal resources in other companies, like I know Dell maybe, and maybe some other companies who also have similar positions. They might also kind of go and help to actually implement the solution to the customer. So yeah, it really depends in the end.
Depends, exactly. Thank you. Thanks. So thanks, Alex. And now my next question is for Chris. So Chris, I want to know, like, we hear a lot, like there are different type of solution architect. There are some partner essays, there are some specialist essays in AWS. So what is that? How you differentiate between how a different solution architect would be from one from solution perspective, another from design. So how is the difference?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I understand that it can be confusing. I would say, so first of all, you have the core solution architects. So the core solutions architect are, for example, what I do, what Alex is doing. So we are generalist solutions architects, and we cover as many AWS services as possible. Now, if you look at all of the AWS services, there are more than 200. Can we know 200 services, more than 200 services? It's impossible. So this is where we try to at least understand the core services at AWS. There are 50, something around 50 core services at AWS. We try to know those at a 200 level. So 200 level means that we can talk technically about those, but we don't necessarily need to be hands-on on those services. And then, of course, we develop a like for some services. I like IoT, for example. So I like getting hands-on on IoT, and it's a plus. Some people prefer machine learning, for example. They get hands-on on machine learning. It's always a plus. But the thing is, we cannot be hands-on on all of the services. So this is where we have another type of solutions architect, which is a specialist solution architect. And the specialists here, they are like really, really good in one specialty. So machine learning, for example, or analytics, for example, or storage or backup. They're very, very good expert in that. They can be hands-on and they can go as low as 400 level. 400, basically, it means that they can also troubleshoot a customer environment or a very complex issue. So these are the specialists. Now, the other type of solution architects are the partner solutions architects. So the partners, basically, they work with systems integrators. So they work with like Atos, Capgemini, Deloitte, and they basically help those partners to sell solutions, or to sell, maybe sell is not the correct word, to design, to conceptualize solutions for an end customer. Okay, so it's a kind of joint approach between AWS and between a system integrator, and they basically put a solution together for an end user. Okay. And that's the
Yeah,
reason
makes
why
sense.
we work for partners as well, is because they might add extra services that we don't provide at AWS. So we need their expertise, and also there's some kind of discounts as well that customers get working with partners. So financially, it's better in some occasions. But yeah, that's the partner solution architect. And the last solution architect that I want to cover is the cloud solution architect. And the name doesn't help, but that's how we call it at AWS. And those are solutions architects that work on the professional services side. Alex
Okay.
mentioned that we don't implement architectures on customers' environments because it's we are free resources, but professional services they do because they get paid for that. And here you find types of solutions architect that actually do the implementation. They have the right to implement on the customer environment. We don't.
Yeah, get your point. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, means there are so many aspects of just being a solution architect and being specialist or partner is so makes sense. Exactly. Now my next question would be to anyone who wants to pick up Alex or Chris. So my question is what are the top three technical skills you think somebody should have to become a solution architect? Top three technical skills.
Yeah, I can start on that one.
Good.
So top three, and I think this is absolutely mandatory for any solution architect role, is to know computing. What's computing? The applications that's power or TikTok or or whatever you're using. And I'm not saying TikTok is on AWS by the way, but any application it needs computing to run, right? It needs some computing power. So you need to understand the compute layer, like the servers that basically power those applications. Now, it's great to have those servers and so on, but those applications generate data and you need to put that data somewhere. So you need
Mm-hmm.
to understand storage as well. So storage is the second technical skill to have. At least you really have to understand that part. Not to deep dive, but at least understand how an application running on a server will actually push data onto storage so you can always access the data in the future. And finally, networking. You have those applications, the services that talk to each other, servers talk with the storage. There's networking in between. So you really need to understand as well the networking aspect. You don't have to be a CCNA person, which is one of the Cisco foundational networking certification, but at least you understand the fact that there is communication between servers and storage, and that reflects a lot in how you're going to design an overall architecture. You really need to understand the latency, what's latency, those sort of things. So yeah, compute, networking, and storage. And if you're getting started in one of these three areas, really look for the videos on YouTube, for example, on getting started with storage 101, networking 101, and get the basics.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So these three things are like what foundation and whatever you are building, you can't shy away from storage, networking, and compute. Exactly, that's true. So that is technical skills, Chris, right? But now I completely understand it is not always technology. We have a lot of behavioral thing also. Like people need to have some interpersonal skills. Sometimes we call it behavioral skill. So my next question is that what are the top three behavioral skills a solution architect should have? Like what differentiate a good solution architect and an average solution architect in terms of behavioral skills?
Yeah, I would say that, but that's very subject to every individual. But from my experience from AWS and also from previous organizations where I've been a solution engineer, it's really to have the capability to listen and to be an
Listen.
active listener, because the more we gain experience in this role, the more we get exposed to situations we've seen 50 hundreds of times and we think we know, but that's so wrong. And I fight against that every day, where I really force myself to listen and try to not jump to a conclusion because it's too easy. And as Ashish as said before, it depends. Every customer is different. So being an active listener and really let the customer talk, and not, because sometimes the customers will try to basically say, "Hey, we don't know. You guys are the expert. Tell me what's the solution. What do we have to do?" And it's too easy to jump to a conclusion. So being an active listener and then ask the right questions and let the customer speak, because the moment they start speaking and they see they have the room to speak, that's from experience I'm saying, they will start opening up on everything. And they start talking about one project, and then they start talking about another project. The moment they start speaking, it's just amazing. You get to know so much about their business challenges and so on. So number one, active listening. The second one, I'm not sure how to describe that as a skill, but it's to basically make the connection between the technical challenge you're trying to solve with how is that going to turn into a business outcome for the company they work for. Because ultimately, those applications they're building, those architectures that we have to put together, it has to turn into revenue or support revenue generation for the business. And I would say keep that in mind. It's a bit hard because we're techie people. We want to know the details of the technical stuff. We want to get excited by the technology and so on. And it's easy to get disconnected from the business outcome. So I don't know how to turn that into a strength, or how to call that into a strength, but keep a focus on the business outcomes. And number three, in terms of behavior, I would say, I don't know. I think the two I've mentioned here are super important. Alex, maybe you have one in mind, but to
Yeah,
me,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
go.
like interpersonal skills. You really need to kind of understand that if you're talking to a company is not a monolithical thing. Companies are built around people, and there are a lot of them, and those people might have different motivations. So if a company even declares that our goal is to go to cloud, our goal is to build this particular application, and then on one level you might see that people really kind of go in one direction. On the other level, if you go to the development team, you might see folks which may be against, which may be even, well, I wouldn't say like sabotaging it, but like really not super motivated or super engaged by this idea. And they might have their own reasons. Maybe they lack resources. Maybe they have maybe they're a little bit scared of something new which they never tried before. And then as an SA, you need to kind of have this. Well, it kind of relates to what Chris said. This active listening skill. You need to kind of understand that all of them might have different reasons, and you need to address those reasons and see how you can help them individually.
Makes sense. Yeah, interesting thoughts. Yeah, so that's something I think most of the people have this question like what they should do to get started. And very common question which I get on my LinkedIn profile is about, hey, do I need to know programming to become a solution architect? So what is your take? Anyone?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. I will take it. That's my favorite
Yeah, go
one.
ahead.
You don't need to know programming. It's not required. Nobody grills you on algorithm design when you're applying for solutions architects, at least at AWS. But it's a very handy skill to have, because it comes sometimes to the point when you need also to deliver a POC, like proof of concept, a proof of concept or a prototype to your customer. It comes when a customer is not sure what you're really talking about, or not sure if the technology is actually capable to deliver what you're talking about. And then the easiest way to demonstrate how it works is just to design sort of application or something and show how it works. There are ways actually to do things even without programming, but if you know one or another programming language, it's definitely easier, to put some lambdas around some other services, to have some automation, and maybe have a little front end in front of this whole back end, not to drag your customers through the whole AWS console experience, especially if it's a business person you're talking to. AWS Management Console might be maybe a little bit less relevant for them to understand because they will never use it. It's more like for technical people. Yeah, so it definitely doesn't hurt. It definitely will help you to solve different technical questions. But if you're coming from network background, for example, it's totally fine. You will have your niche, and those skills are also very important. And it's just that every one of us have a little bit different skill set, and kind of it's all good. So if you know programming, it's good. If you don't know programming but willing to learn it, do it. It will help you. If you don't care about programming, you don't see yourself writing code for some good reason, but you have different skill sets, like for example, you're super strong in networking or security. Be it. It's all fine.
Nice, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. And now I have one more question related to roles because there are multiple public facing roles which we get, right? So there are some roles which is called professional services, there are some technical account manager and solution architect. So how the role is different for these three personas?
Right, I can start untangling this one, and then Chris, if you have something to add or subtract from my explanation, please do so. So, as a solutions architect, you're not alone. There are some different roles around you, and just think about it that you are like a larger team trying to help a customer in the end. As a solutions architect, you're kind of a front runner for new projects, for new initiatives, for like migrations, greenfield projects, modernizations, you name it. Then, as Chris already said, solutions architects, at least at AWS, they don't really implement the code. So the most of the implementation you're gonna get is to design a prototype and hand it over. Then if customer needs support from AWS to actually implement it, customer needs to be connected to professional services. Professional services have their own architects. Those architects are called differently. They are application architects, cloud architects, and so on and so on. Those guys will really do hands-on part. They really kind of go and put the solution together, and then TAMs are this stands for Technical Account Manager, and those guys at AWS, they are focused on customer in terms of operations. So they're kind of on the support side of things, on operations. If something breaks, they are the ones staying there in front of the customer, helping them to overcome the problem. If there's like a support issue that customer really needs to escalate, they are the ones kind of pushing it through, internals of AWS towards the resolution faster. So SA is gonna be like maybe connecting those dots and helping out with more like planning stuff, and then TAM is gonna be like on the operational sort of part where systems already kind of running or maybe breaking and then need to be brought back on track.
Makes sense. Chris, you have something to add on this?
No, I think it's very well summarized. Mostly solutions architects, we come before a solution is purchased by a customer, and then professional services, they are more of a paid engagement to put a solution in production. So we don't interact much there. We interact much more for the discovery phase, what the customer tries to achieve, and so on. Once the picture is already clear and the customer wants to implement, then professional services take over. There's two questions that are on the chat. Ashish, I don't know if I can quickly cover those.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I think one was about if we use like cloud formation or if we can use like Terraform instead. We're not picky on what customers use, to be honest. For example, the customer that I look after, they are heavy on Terraform. And I can't really change that. They use whatever they want, really. It's
Yeah.
compatible, it works, so yeah. And the other question, how does a solution architect differ from a pre-sales architect? So I used to be called a pre-sales at VMware, and I'm a solution architect at Amazon Services. It's the same role. It's just that some
Okay.
companies have different names.
Yeah, it's a different name, but actually idea is to like help customer in understanding what the problem is, understand their problem and design a solution around it. So yeah, thank you.